Good afternoon, good evening. Welcome, welcome. I see everyone is coming in. We're so excited to have you this evening for this conversation. I know that you have been waiting for this conversation this evening. We're going to get started. I see the numbers are growing. They are growing significantly. So welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Misha Green, and I will serve as the moderator this evening for our May Week event. So, the theme for our May Week has been about trailblazing and trend setting, right? So, the topic of our conversation tonight is trust the process, right? How will the proposed changes for the Department of Education impact us? And when I tell you we have a dynamic panel available this evening to talk about education in its state, you are truly in for a treat. So before we start with introductions of our panelists, our experts, and our trailblazers, I would like to first turn it over for a welcome from our second Vice President, Kiana Butler.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of our dynamic chapter and in my role as second vice president, I would like to welcome you. It is both an honor and a pleasure to welcome you to today's educational panel discussion. Trust the process. How will the proposed changes for the Department of Education impact us? As part of our May Week celebration, trailblazing and trendsetting, the evolution of Delta, we are proud to host this timely and important conversation. Today's panel brings together voices from the local district and state levels of education leadership. These individuals not only shape policy, but they live its implications every day, making them the perfect partner for unpacking how upcoming changes in education may influence our schools, our communities, and most importantly, our children. We know that with change often comes uncertainty, but also opportunity. Our hope is that this panel will spark meaningful dialogue, deepen our understanding, and encourage proactive engagement as we navigate these shifts together. Thank you for being here, your commitment to education, and your trust in the process. Let's lean in, ask questions, and leave empowered. Welcome again and enjoy the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So much. So you have been welcome. I see the attendance numbers are growing. So let me just set a little ground rules, a couple of norms before we get started. As you can see, we have a chat box as well as a Q&A box. We will be checking those throughout the session this evening, and we will be able to ask your questions. Also, I want to let you know reactions are free. So feel free to clap it up, give us some hearts. Go ahead and show us that you are really enjoying what we're saying this evening. So, as you know, we are here to talk about education. So, we have a wonderful panel of educators that are among us. So, before they introduce themselves, I just want to give a little background about myself. My name is Misha Green again. I am an educational consultant. I have been in education for over 20 years, and it has been a wonderful opportunity. I've done everything from teach mathematics to lead schools as a principal and a director of leadership development. I'm so ready to lean into what these ladies have to say. When I say we have some powerhouses on this panel tonight, I'm talking about some powerhouses. I got my ink pen and my notepad ready because I'm going to be taking some good notes so I can come back and use this in my work every day. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the floor for the panel to introduce themselves. We're going to first start with the local level, and we're going to start with Kiana Riviera.
All right, happy Thursday and greeting.
I think or is it me? Did I freeze?
Everyone. I am Kiana Revere, and in my workspace and place, worked in Atlanta Public Schools, Rockdale County, as well as Richmond and Augusta.
Kiana, you may have to turn off your camera.
I've also served as a district ELA of Georgia. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you got a little
Yes.
frozen.
And I've also, I currently, oh no, is this better?
Yes, that's better. Let's see. It's
Okay,
okay. They're giving
thank
us
you.
heart. They're giving us
And
heart.
I appreciate the love and the patience. Technology can be your friend and enemy.
Yeah.
And I currently serve as principal of a local charter school on the South Atlanta side. We're about 7 minutes from the airport. And so this is my second year as the principal, and I went in as the director of curriculum and instruction. It may not be a fun fact, but it can be a rare fact. I am born and raised and native Atlantan. So I was initiated in as a member of Delta Sigma Theta in 2014, Douglas, Carroll, Paulding counties, and I've been a member of Atlanta Suburban for the past 2 years. So I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Welcome, welcome. That's our local expert that will be giving us her lens from the principal seat. So our next panelist, this young lady is no stranger to myself. We work together in Atlanta Public Schools. I'm going to have Tamirian McCray Lakes to come off mute to introduce herself.
Hello, everyone. I am Tamaria McCrary Lakes. I too have over 20 years of educational experience. I am a native of Southwest Atlanta, and I served in a variety of positions as a part of my career. I've been a science teacher, a department chair, been an assistant principal, a magnet coordinator, what else? A principal. I spent most of my career as a high school principal. I spent 12 years as a high school principal. I went on to be a principal supervisor, a chief academic officer, and now I serve as a deputy superintendent of school improvement and accountability. So I am super excited to serve on this panel with these with my amazing co-presenters, and looking forward to a great conversation.
Yes, thank you for that. Yes, ma'am. But last but not least, so Miriam will be given the lens through the district level. But last but not least, we have Chantel Mullen, who is truly a powerhouse. And she has saved me so many times when I worked in Atlanta Public Schools. And I'm going to allow her to introduce herself this evening.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Sister Misha. It is so good to see my former colleagues from Atlanta Public Schools. They were truly a joy to work with, and we always helped each other, help a sister out when we were working in Atlanta Public Schools. I, as well, have over 20 years of experience in education. I have actually had the pleasure of working both on the program side and on the legal side. So while in Atlanta Public Schools, I served as a department head over numerous student services department. I've also worked at the state level. I worked previously at the Governor's Office of Student Achievement as a staff attorney, at the Georgia Department of Education as an assistant general counsel, and I currently serve in a DC education agency as the senior assistant general counsel. And so I've been able to see education from various lenses, and you'll know I am the only one on the panel not wearing red. I am a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I love my Delta sisters. I am a 25-year, what we call a Silver Star member, also a life member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, and I am a member of the Kappa Omega chapter in Southwest Atlanta.
Wonderful. So I told you, audience, you was in for a treat. So I know I have in the audience, I have educators, I have parents, and I have just community members. And I am so excited because as you can hear, we're going to hear it from the local, the district, and the federal level about what can we expect as we prepare for these changes in education. So I just want to set the stage for a moment. Thank you for all the hearts, all the love that we're getting in the reactions. So we're going to start to kind of set the stage. So as you know, or if you are aware, there are some proposed changes to public education. So currently, some things under the new administration, they're looking to increase state and local control. They're looking at an emphasis on school choice. They're looking at an infinite emphasis on accountability and discipline. You know, what would that look like different than what we're currently seeing? Changes to federal funds and programs. So I want you to really let that soak in. We're going to talk about what that really means in a few moments. Changes in federal funding and programs. Also, really thinking about some of the things that superintendents have received in the last couple of weeks from the Department of Education as it relates to funding and all of those things. So I just wanted to kind of lay a light foundation about why we're here to set this context before we dive right into the questions from our wonderful panel. So the first thing we're going to ask is this question. So ladies, from your perspective, what are the most significant proposed changes to the Department of Education that could impact our schools and our community? So, Ms. Riviera, would you like to start, Kiana, with that for us, please, tonight?
Sure, I can. So having worked in both public schools and charter schools, right now the biggest that we're looking at is the Promise Scholarship Program, right? So that is where in Georgia they are giving $6,000 of funding for school choice, and that's basically towards private school and or homeschooling. And so one thing that we know in education is that there is a decrease in enrollment. And so with the decrease in enrollment, a lot of our kids are transient. And when I say our kids, the kids that are on the South Side. There, and being in a charter school, I know that I have families who have decided to homeschool, charter school, public school, homeschool, charter school. And so I think it's really going to have an impact on increasing the number of transient students that we have. And in that increase, when families realize, that the $6,000 may lessen or it may not be available because as Tamarian said earlier, changes are happening every day. So we don't know what's going to happen year to year. Then families who really can't afford it, but who took a chance, they're going to move their kids from one school to another, and then that's going to impact their learning, right? So their actual student achievement is going to be greatly impacted. So it's just more than money. We're thinking about what is this going to look like for students? What is it going to do for our enrollment? So there are just multiple factors and facets of the impact that this Promise Scholarship will have, again, because we don't know how sustainable it will be. And again, there will be families that can afford it and that benefit from it. And we know that there will be those that look more like us that won't.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Tamarian, you want to add to that?
Absolutely. I would love to build on Kiana's response there because she talked about the opportunity scholarship. And so again, that it would be a source of, really removing funding from school districts related to that. So I want to build on that. I spent most of my career in Title I schools. And so as we hear more and more information around how these title programs will be impacted, I do know that through Title I funding, through Title II funding, Title III funding, I was able to put some things in place related to extra tutorial, some other interventions, decreasing class size, providing additional supports to students, just to level the playing field as it relates to their economically disadvantaged status, or whether or not they were English learners, or whatever those students needed in order to support their educational advancement. And so just really have questions around how we navigate the gaps that creates when we don't have access to that funding. So we're really in a space of having to do more with less. And sometimes that is okay because sometimes we have too much of things, right? And so we need to really think about how we need to dial back, streamline. However, I just really want to, just really trying to be thoughtful about the larger impact this is going to make as we think about not just students. I think a lot of times we think about students that are in the inner city or in certain demographic groups, but we have a lot of students that are in rural areas that just do not have access to the largesse of a big city tax base. And so when you're talking about the removal of these title funds and other funding sources, you really put those students at a disadvantage. And so that's one piece that I would like to just kind of lift up. In addition to that, we lean on our education, the U.S. Department of Education, to provide grants to, if you take a look at the Department of Government Efficiency's website, if you go through that entire list, you will see that a lot of what has been reduced is around educational research. Well, the WorkWorks Clearinghouse is a way that we can get access to vetted scholarly research as it relates to interventions that work for kids, all kids. And so, that just means that school districts will have to take on that piece. And that's not always bad. I think there is a complement that needs to happen there, because we do have teachers and principals and leaders that are doing an amazing job in moving kids. And so we can do some action research in our own districts related to that and scale up practices. But still, that resource has just been a great resource for us in school districts as it relates to the identification of that, especially in trying to make sure that we are making investments in things that give us a return on investment as relate in the form of student achievement and supports for kids. So those just a couple of examples that I could think of at the moment. Oh, may I just add one more?
Absolutely.
I'm so sorry. Okay, I promise you. I'm going to stop talking. But also the community education's provisions. So as a result of working in schools that are mostly title, I have had the opportunity to work in schools where students receive that need 100% of the students receive breakfast and lunch for free. And so in some communities, especially with food insecurity, we have students that really have come to depend on schools for some of those basic needs as well. And so just trying to think about the removal of those grants that create those opportunities and provide access for kids, just have a great concern about what that means for kids who are experiencing that.
That's a great one, right? We really think my parents that are out there listening to this is very important. Thinking about that grant, that is a grant that they're receiving for free and reduced lunch to support those communities. So it's very important that we know what is going on. So when we go to the polls, we can make informed decisions about what's impacting our community and our schools. So Chantel, I'm gonna let you add from your lens to that question. Do you need me to repeat the question? Or are you good?
Sure, go ahead and repeat it.
Okay, so from your perspective, what are the most significant proposed changes to the Department of Education that could impact our schools and communities?
Okay. Well, I'm going to piggyback on what Sister Tamarian said when she was talking about those grants, because those grants come from the U.S. Department of Education. Now, quite despite what people like to say, the U.S. Department of Education does not run schools. They provide funding, and that's primarily their role. And they fund some very important things in the form of grants that are awarded to the State Department of Education's or awarded directly to schools. That funding is used in a number of ways. Title I, which supports low-income schools. They also provide funding for Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA. If you're looking at higher education, we're looking at Pell Grants. We're also looking at programs such as free and reduced lunch. That is funded through a grant from the Department of Education. We also have other programs like Head Start. And so when we're thinking about how it's going to impact, the current administration wants to restructure all of that or reduce funding for all of that. So we have to be mindful that when we vote for people, we give them the ability to make changes, good and bad, to those programs that impact our students. Another point that I haven't heard a lot of discussion about is the Office of Civil Rights, OCR, which is in the Department of Education. That department investigates racial discrimination, disability rights violations, sexual harassment under Title IX, and it handled over 19,000 complaints between uh, 2022 and 2024. So parents who feel like they've been discriminated against, their children may have been harassed, they are not being treated fairly in schools, could file a complaint with OCR, and OCR would investigate. That department, they have fired all those lawyers. They have reduced those investigators. And so there are no places currently where, well, I'm not going to say no places. They still have some investigative arm. It looks a lot different right now. And so we should be clear that how we believe racial discrimination was investigated prior to the start of 2025 and how it's being investigated now are very different. So I would add all of those changes as well.
I love it. You said something that I wanted to point out. The federal government does not run schools. So that could be a big misconception that a lot of people have, that the federal government actually runs the schools. But they do provide funding, which is very important. And all those programs you mentioned, Title I, IDEA, if you don't know, you know, in education, we have a lot of acronyms, free and reduced lunch. So really understanding the impact of the funding. Also, we talked about the civil rights department. So my parents, my educators, and my community members, this is very important as we start to lay out and start to think about this. So the next question, ladies, I want to pose to you is, based on some of the things we talked about, what impact do you foresee on teacher recruitment, certification, and retention if some of these proposals move forward? How will this impact that building level support that we need to ensure that our children are prepared to be productive citizens of society? So, Tamirian, I want to start with you on that question.
So as we think about the impact that this could have on, at the local school level and teacher preparation, I just want to add just a little bit of context at the district level that, the boards of education are charged with, creation of policy that ensure that all of our students are positioned to have opportunities, access, and outcomes, and to have an education as it relates to that. And so as a result of that, they also are charged with developing a budget that is in support of their priorities related to that. So I just wanted to make sure that we called that out, because although we are seeing this shift from, or some of these adjustments or changes that are coming from the federal Department of Education, as we shift to more of a local control or state control and things of that nature, boards of education are empowered with the funding that they have to be able to allocate resources in support of that based on how much they have. So I just wanted to make sure I called that out. But to answer your question around those grants, well, there are grants that really we partner with universities that receive grants, school districts receive grants, other organizations receive grants that are really around priming the teacher pipeline, because what we know right now is we do not have a hiring pool, we have a hiring puddle. And it's not even a puddle anymore, it's a hiring drip. And so I do think that there is going to be an impact for those initiatives that are really dependent on funding, right? Coming from an outside source. And so I do anticipate, some adjustments related to that, because I can think about some really robust partnerships with universities that are really working to increase the number of teachers that are ready to go into the classrooms. But I want to add another point that people may not readily think about and make the connection to. If we think about some of the conversation around loan forgiveness program, when you come out, and I talk to people all the time. Y'all said this was going to be intimate. I talk to people all the time about when I became a teacher, I made about 39,000, 38, 36, whatever it was. But I was able to purchase a home. Now, my throat closed up every month. The mortgage note came because it was tight, but I was able to purchase a home and all of those things. So as we take a look at the cost of living, and we know that school districts are working hard as it relates to pay for teachers. However, for folks that are going into college and they just do not have the funding for that, if public student loan forgiveness, that may, some of the conversation that we're hearing, if there's some adjustment to that program, that also could have an impact on the teacher pipeline. And so that's going to require boards of education, that's going to require school districts and states to get really creative around what this looks like. Because what we have not done a good job, so I'm going to move away from the federal part, and now I'm just going to talk locally. What we have not done a really good job at is making the role look attractive in the first place. Why would somebody want to sign up for it based on how we talk about it? So we've got to also talk about the moments of pure joy that are in education as well. And I can only speak for myself. Education and being a teacher was my step into the middle class. It has been a fantastic career for me. And so although we have tons of hardships and things of that nature, and I know there are hard times and hard seasons in education, don't ask about education in October because we're all exhausted, right? So we know that there are hard seasons, but we also have to think about that as well and think about what that looks like. And school districts, as well as states, have to think about what that looks like as it relates to relieving some of the burden and teaching being so hard. Sometimes in school districts, we're just piling too much on in classrooms. So I do know that there could be an impact related to funding, but there are also some opportunities we have to streamline, to get really clear on the supports that we provide with the resources that we do have. And I think as a school district, we have that responsibility, as well as the state has the responsibility as well.
I love that answer. I love it. I love it. Kiana, you want to add to that?
So just on a local level or the school-based level, right? Going back to the very first question, my school, actually, we got the notice in February that we will no longer be a Title I school for next year. The threshold has changed. So as a result, we're losing over $500,000. A great deal, 80% of our $500,000 funds teachers. It funds our instructional coaches. It funds our paraprofessionals who support our IEP students or EIP students, as well as our high area or high need students. And so with that, we know the budget, our own personal budget is a balancing act, right? But it is definitely it's definitely impacting the services, the extra supports that we can provide to our students. In addition to being a charter school, it's a myth that we take money away from districts, right? We have to make sure that in retaining teachers that we have competitive salaries. And so that's also hitting us very hard. Being in Metro Atlanta, where Cobb County and APS, they're hitting us hard. We're very close to the salary range in Fulton County, maybe 2% less. But other districts such as DeKalb and Clayton, as a small charter school, we do pay more. Rockdale, Newton counties, those districts. And so we're trying to remain competitive. But then we think about, again, this puddle, as Samarian has referred to it, it's very shallow. It's even less. We don't get to share the district's pool. So finding teachers, attracting teachers, and once we attract them, well, can we afford a highly qualified teacher? There's a teacher that I interviewed yesterday and would love to have her, and she's asking for $102,000, right? But then there's a brand new teacher who may come in who, we can pay $50,000, but then it becomes, because I said that teaching now is almost like it's a side hustle, right? We're not making it look attractive. So people are coming for a steady check, but not with the passion. And that's what's most important, the passion for the children. So, and do I want to bank on getting someone who is looking at this as a side hustle? Or am I going to be able to expend my budget for someone who I know is going to teach the kids, love the kids, and get results, right? And so this balancing act, and because of the removal of funds, it is really hard. And then having to tell people that you no longer have a position, you're impacting people's livelihood and forcing them to maybe leave a place where they have really contributed to, that they love. Again, I look for people that love kids, right? I can coach you, I can teach you how to be a teacher, but in a place where you fit. We know as leaders in a school, a fit is a thing. And when you have to lose someone because you can't pay them when they fit so well, it hurts and impacts our kids. And so that's where we currently are.
That's powerful. You heard it here first, ladies and gentlemen in the audience. We have a school that has already been impacted by these proposed changes. And we're losing those Title I funds is going to have a trickle-down impact on what happens in the classroom. So I want you to really think about that and really think about what can we do as a community to make sure that we can support these schools and community and be on the front line to help support these districts, these charter schools, these local and national initiatives to see that our children are not suffering in these buildings because funds have been removed. Chantel, what you want to add to that?
I would just add that, looking at this from the federal level, there are two grants that really help support teachers. That was the Teacher Quality Partnership Program and also the Supporting Effective Educator Development Grants. All of that is at risk of being cut. And we have seen already at the state level, because remember, the state controls the quality of your teacher. The federal government supported training those teachers by giving the states grant money and to develop training programs. And so we have seen a fast track of waiving or reducing certification standards, or having or providing alternative pathways for those who are not traditionally trained as teachers. Now, I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing. I'm just saying it is a thing and it will impact how our students are trained. And here's something I will add to the conversation that I want everybody to remember. There's a lot of things that happen, and there's a lot of professions. Um, the one that almost every one of us has in common is a teacher. And the other thing that every profession has in common is they were taught by somebody. So this is a very, very important part of how our society moves forward and how we move our professions forward. And so it is unfortunate that we do not talk about and treat teachers the way that's equal to their status in our society. They train every doctor, they train every lawyer, the teachers train the teachers, the teachers train the pastors. Everybody in our society is taught by someone. And we just have gotten to a point where we just do not have the level of respect um, and the pay commiserate with what teachers really pour in to the community.
Mhm.
I love it. Yes, we have to really, we've taught everybody, LeBron, we taught him. Steph Curry, we taught him. We taught Tom Brady, we taught them. So really thinking about, the impact that we've had on individuals' lives and really respecting the profession. So audience, I hope you are really soaking this up. We have some great questions and comments in the chat and doing the Q&A as well. I just really love the feedback that you're giving us. So since we're talking about policy and people are wanting to know, what can I do? What can I do to support this? So my next question, and I'm gonna start with you, Chantel, on this one. How should parents, students, because we may have some students on here, we might have some collegiate students, some teachers getting ready to be teacher leaders and community leaders. How should parents, students, and community organizations prepare or respond to these potential shifts in education policy?
Honestly, right now, we just need to buckle up. That's the first thing, because it's a lot of changes and they're coming hard and fast. But where you can start is where I tell people to start with everything. Start in your own community, because as I said earlier, the Department of Education does not run schools. Local control, particularly in Georgia, is a thing. It is embedded in the state constitution. That's something I used to write all the time as assistant general counsel, that local control is embedded in the constitution. That means that your local board of education is going to be very important, because how your district responds, and they are cutting funding. And so your district may have to figure out where to get funding from if you take a particular stance. Um, think about your local elections. So you need to know who is elected to your school board. You need to know who is elected as your mayor or your city council, because those are very important partnerships for your school district. You need to know and understand who is being elected as your state superintendent or appointed as your state superintendent, which means you may need to know who is your governor, because in some states, the state superintendent is elected, like Georgia, but in some states, the state superintendent, like New York, is appointed. That chancellor is appointed by the governor. So it's important that you know all of these players, and that one, you're getting out to vote for them, and make sure that they are aligned to your values and they support your values. We can no longer not pay attention to elections. Every election is critical. Your rights and your funding is on the ballot every election. And so this is the analogy that I give people. Would you give your 16-year-old the keys to your car, the keys to your house, your bank account, your credit cards, and then you would leave for 4 years and tell them to take care of everything? If the answer is no, why do you give politicians who take money out your check, who use your tax dollars to pay for things in your community, who write rules that will impact your house, your person, your anything, and you don't pay, you elect them and you throw them the keys and walk out the door? You have to inspect what you expect, and you need to show up, and you need to have a relationship. If you can't name all of your politicians in your local community today, this is why we in the state we in. If they haven't seen you since they were out here running and asking us for our vote, that's part of the problem. Why we are where we are. When they get elected, they work for you. If you are a boss, why would you not check on your employees? We have allowed them to flip the paradigm. Like, we're we're responsible to them. No, they're responsible to us. We're paying them with our tax dollars. So we've got to have a mental mind shift and go in there like we the boss. Ask to have, I challenge everybody, write your local officials and ask them to get on a Zoom with you for 15 minutes. Find 3 issues and tell them about those issues. Make sure you follow them on social media. So when they are having meetings, you need to show up. That's my point. I'm
I,
passing the mic.
So I'm reading the comments and I'm seeing the hearts and the hand claps going crazy. They said, now that's a word. Inspect what you expect. And we know that because of leaders, right? We knew that was our favorite phrase, but you said something very important. And I think sometimes we forget this. Local elections matter. You said something when you said if you don't know your school board, they can go and pass stuff and you have no clue. because you know what? Sometimes parents, sometimes community members, we don't realize that we have a place at the table. And I'm gonna give this as an example. I was a principal of an elementary school that was on the chopping block for closing. And my parents came to me and said, we don't know what to do. What are we going to do? I said, well, you got to show up at the board meeting. You do know that they'll listen to you. I can try to say to school all day long. They don't listen to me. It's the community. You have to talk to your board member. You have to go in there and demand. You have to inspect what you expect and say, you will not close my building. You will not allow my kids to go 5-10 miles away from my home to go to school. And they had to do that. But I think we really have to realize that we do have the power, but sometimes we forget that we hold the power. And like you said, they spending our money, hustling us out of our vote, and then we don't see them again till 4 years later. And where's the accountability? There is none.
Let me just add one quick point. Which would you think has the bigger budget, Atlanta Public Schools or the City of Atlanta? Atlanta Public Schools has more money than the City of Atlanta. So those folks that are often elected by 2,500 votes sometimes are over there managing a $1 billion budget, y'all. Come on now. You got to know who you are putting in office because you are giving them a tremendous amount of power. They can impact your property values. They can impact the quality of your school. They can impact who's hired at those schools. They impact all of those things. And we oftentimes give people those seats because nobody is showing up for the election. They're winning those seats by a couple of hundred votes, and you're giving them a $1 billion budget.
I told you tonight was going to be mind blowing. You know, the mind blowing emoji. So give us. I know this is good. So Marian, add to that. What do you want to add to that from that district level?
As you talked about the importance of, and you too, Misha, when you talked about the importance of local boards of education, and I think what we don't readily recognize is the Board of Education is charged with unified governance around the hopes and dreams and aspirations of the community and setting a path so that our students are successful. And so I don't have to revisit that. I think they just knocked it out of the park as it relates to that. But what I want to add on to is because as a person, I guess it's just because I'm a middle child and I just had to figure some stuff out. So I'm always thinking about, okay, the so what, now what? I think another piece of this we've got to think about is it's time to restore the village. We're seeing far too many children that are showing up in schools that have devices and but they can't, they're coming to school and they're just not ready. And so, and these are children that are not necessarily from just economically disadvantaged backgrounds and things of that nature. So it is so important that as we talk about all of the funding sources and what the government needs to do and what the local folks need to do and what the school district needs to do, we also have to talk about the importance of ensuring that we are valuing education in the home. That has a tremendous impact on the lift that our teachers have in classrooms. And we have that responsibility. We accept that responsibility. We embrace that responsibility. It is some of the most, I tell people, I do not increase the bottom line for Walmart. My job is all about kids and increasing opportunities and access for kids. We embrace that wholeheartedly. But I'm going to tell you some of the, one of the most disheartening experiences that I had as a person supporting at the state level. Walking into a kindergarten classroom, seeing 18 kids, 3 of them able to recognize letters, and this teacher working her heart out. And so I am going to ask you within your family network, within your community, to begin to have conversations around, okay, are we reading on grade level? When we're showing up in schools, we're not just asking about the cell phone that was confiscated. We're asking about, is my child on grade level? What do I need to do? Is he behind? Or, whatever the case may be, and taking full advantage of all of the opportunities that are occurring in schools every single day. So when I say restore the village, I'm just talking about also making sure that we're solving for that within our schools as well. And this is not just about in the home. We also need robust partnerships outside the home. I used to be a principal over at Coretta Scott King Young Women's Leadership Academy at the high school. And I can tell you, the Magnolia chapter of the Links That mentoring program, they were so consistent for multiple years, and they still may be there providing mentorship to our young ladies. It is so hard to find mentors for young people in schools that are consistent and that understand that we are working with kids that have robust needs. We also have schools that have, what, believe it or not, some of y'all know because you're educators on the line, have schools with washer and dryers because we have to make sure we're taking care of the whole child. School kids come to us to school without coats. We're providing coats to children. So if you are out shopping over at Burlington, I probably dated myself with that, pick up an extra coat and drop it off at the school. I guarantee you there's somebody that we can give it to. And so it's about that. We have people that make phantom donations and say, we want to pay the lunch bill for kids. So there's a way for us to rally together to ensure that we are prioritizing outcomes for our kids as well. It's not just an outside answer. I think it is, I think it's all working together.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. And really that village piece is saying we need you all to come back because as we know, and as you know, parents, you control the policy. They can't make policy if you stand forward and say that you don't want that. You don't want that policy. You want these policies in place. So you have to be there. So we have to not only show up at the schools, think about coming to the board meetings. How can you be a part of that? Setting out that they meet once a month at the same time. That's one thing that's consistent. Board meetings are consistently at the same time. Show up. And I promise you, when you show up, they're going to shake in their boots because they're going to say, now, why are they here? They're never here. And you can sign up for public comment. That's what it's for. Sign up for public comment. You want to know what's going on in your schools and the impact that this is having on policies in your school, because it is true. Local control is so true. Kiana, what you want to add to that?
I mean, you all have said all of the things, right? Definitely on the school level, stay engaged appropriately, so as opposed to, coming about, like she said, the phones. Take time. If you give your school an hour a week, if you give it 2 hours a month, right? Not just for your child. Go to the school and make yourself available to serve the school, to serve the school community. For those of you that don't have the time, but you may have an extra few dollars, whether it is paying a child's bill, lunch bill, and/or saying, hey, here's just a general donation to the school for whatever, it's coming up. Also, something that's very important, events like this, stay informed, find credible sources. We have everything from Facebook to TikTok to Instagram, but find those credible sources. Information is at our fingertips. So, I'm a news watcher. I'm going to watch CNN, Channel 2, 1146, whatever it is. People may not have that time. We have podcasts. There's so many different ways to get information, but find something credible and continue to get the information and impart information with others. Share what you have learned, share those resources, because what I find is that oftentimes we don't search for ourselves, we don't look for ourselves, we don't have the appropriate information before we begin to approach, address, and/or attack whatever is taking place. And because things are changing constantly, we can't just sit back and say, hey, this is what they said then. Even when I got invited to the session, I was like, okay, let me do my research. I've had to research several times over, as policies have changed and/or ideas have changed. And what I will say, lastly, is be a friend and not a foe to schools. Mm. We don't wake up wanting to do anything malice, ill intent to children. 99.9% of the people that are in the building, from whether it is the environmental services to the nutrition to if you have school bus drivers, whatever, are there for children. Be a friend, be a foe, be willing to listen to us, to support us, as that's why we're there for the babies and you.
This is some great stuff. Like, I'm really loving this. I see the comments in the chat. I'm trying to read those and look at questions as well. It is just amazing that this information is somebody, and you all said it, events like this. The more you know, the more you are equipped, the more you are educated as a parent, as an educator, as a community member. It is so important to make change possible. So I want to go to a question that is in the chat. And I have to look because I don't have my readers on. So it says, how should education evolve? And we know that education has this pendulum, right? I think about people tell me that all the time. But how should education evolve to prepare students for a rapidly changing workforce and global society? So, panelists, I'll give you a few moments to think about that question because we do know that our society is changing AI. We just talked about these devices. When I was teaching, they didn't have no devices. They had Walkmans. I'm dating myself, but things have changed. So who wants to start with that question first?
Repeat. I want to make sure I didn't miss that end part. Repeat the question for me.
Okay. It says, how should education evolve to prepare students for a rapidly changing workforce and global society?
Well, I'll jump in. One of the things I say to folks is we really missed an opportunity with the pandemic to really shake up how we do education. And so now we're just kind of taking a look at that and how do we embrace the fact that we're preparing kids for jobs that we don't even know exist just yet. So if you think about what it's going to take even to engineer AI in the future, you're going to have to think about kids that are problem solvers, that are creative, and how are we nourishing that in our classrooms? Or are we still traditional as it relates to what that look like? Are we embracing AI or are we shying away from AI? Are we looking at AI and that's just not one example, that's just one example, but are we looking at that as just a plug and play? Or are we teaching kids how to prompt engineer, which is the future of what this looks like? And so I think what we're going to have to do is make sure we're embracing the ideas of the innovators in education, staying up to date of current workforce trends and things of that nature, and in making sure that we are in position to ensure our kids are ready for jobs for the future. And that looks like, one of the things I can think about is our local technical college here at Henry County Schools has just done tremendous work around upskilling, not just students, but adults. And so how can we continue those partnerships and continue to be innovation? How are we working with workforce development? If you listen to the governor's message, there has just been a big focus on manufacturing and pulling all of those pieces. And a warehouse doesn't look the same that it did 20 years ago. It is run by robots. And so how are we preparing kids for jobs of the future? So my response is we have to embrace it and ensure that our classrooms and the skills and the knowledge that we're focused on is preparing kids for jobs of the future.
I love it. I love it. AI is not going anywhere. Kiana, you want to add to that?
No, I completely agree with that in terms of what we're offering students, but I also want to reiterate what Marion said. As a school, we will evolve, but we need to go back to some of the traditions that we had, and that is the village, right? And in ensuring that our students are at home, learning that education is important. And learning that when you're at home, there's a space and a place for you to continue the work that you're learning and doing in school. And giving our kids an opportunity to be appropriately creative and communicative at home as opposed to being on a device and being quiet, and having conversations, getting to know what interests your children so that you can advocate for them on the school level in increasing the kind of offerings and programs, non-instructional and instructional on a school level.
Thank you, Chantel.
Well, I will say I agree with both of my esteemed panelists. But I will also say that there are some things that never go out of style. One is reading, one is critical thinking, and then the other is math and science and English, because we still have to know how to communicate. You can use AI to the best ability, but if you don't It's like junk in, junk out. If you don't know what it's giving you is wrong, then you can use it in a way that's not very productive. And so you've got to be able to know what prompts to put in, what words to use to get certain outcomes, because AI can be extremely technical in some regards. So I think we still have to push a level of baseline skills. You have to know how to read. It's the key that opens everything. And I actually think we should double down and spend more money on teaching people how to read and read early and encourage lifelong learning. As we If you look at the rates of reading once people graduate from high school, most people don't read 5 books a year or at all. You can see low literacy just across multiple segments of our community. People know how to read what they need to do, but they just don't read. I read for pleasure. I read for enjoyment. I could read all day, every day. I love reading. Um, so, I think we need to double down on that. We also need to think about the things that um, light up parts of the brain. I know we've gotten rid of cursive. There are things that stimulate brain growth. And so we need to look at those things that light up the pathways in our brain. And I know people like to have thrown a lot of stuff away. There were a lot of really good um, processes. It got this Gen X uh, crew right on through. And we've thrown a lot of that in the trash. We need to make sure that we have good practices that give people good foundation, because you need a foundation to build upon for any job. And I'm going to say this, the purpose of education is not just to get a job. I know that's, you know, you should live an abundant life. You should be able to see things, learn things, and enjoy. I don't believe in that we are just sticking people in school to only be educated. More education leads to better outcomes, period. Family, health, life, all of that. And so I think if we take a more holistic approach to this, because it's not just about jobs, it's about well-being. And I think we can do more for our people.
I love it. I'm reading the chat.
On there because I saw something that was a fantastic response from my panelists, but I
Yes.
wanted to add something because I saw something that a parent said. And as we talk about these tools that are out there, how do you help your child at home if you don't know? You may be getting words and things of that nature. Leverage the tool, use the tool. So if your student is bringing home work and you're not clear on it, put it in there, and then how can I help my child at home with this if I don't understand it? So just playing with those prompts so that you can help to give kids extra practice related to that. And I'm going to tell you something else, because I'm just really building on what Chantel said. I have a 3.5-year-old, well, he'll be 4, my grandson, and one of the things that I'm already telling him, because some of our kids come to school already saying, I don't know how to do math. At home, we're already saying, as he counts his crackers, I love math. Readers are leaders. So it's also that mindset of not feeling defeated when you walk into classrooms as you think about your future. And so I just think all of these pieces work together so that we're all on the same page and working together to increase opportunities for kids.
And I'm gonna add one other thing. We are about 5 years into post-COVID, because COVID happened 2020. There's a lot of COVID babies, and those babies are going to start going there. Some of them are in school now. And, while we talk about there's a lag, what I also want to challenge us to understand that there are some babies who are going to come in that classroom and knock the socks off of teachers, because what they had is their parents who were professionals at home sitting on Zooms, and they were able to listen to an extraordinary amount of vocabulary over these 5 years. So those children, there are going to be some children who are going to come into classroom, these COVID babies, they are going to have, because they've been listening. They've been listening to news. They've been at home with their parents. I had a colleague, her son is in school. That baby he is on a second grade vocabulary level. He would get on calls with me and quiz me about words that he was learning at home. And I'm like, boy, stop. But we've got to understand just giving babies language. If we gave them more language and earlier, it would be, we would see phenomenal outcomes. If we start to teach them reading early, I send that baby a book regularly and he reads, and his mama sends me a report card. He read the book. Oh, he loves the book. We've got to encourage those behaviors very early, and they will help children all the way through school. Because once you teach them to read, there's nobody who can teach them not to read.
I'm telling you, it's great. Y'all had some great discussions. Somebody put in the chat, education is truly a collective responsibility. And I truly believe in this. And I want to say this as we get ready to bring our evening to a close. There are some great questions, and we could not get to them all. Some of them we might be able to type an answer to. We have enjoyed you all listening to us this evening. I know I saw somebody in the chat that's in higher education that said they're glad that they're here to hear what we're talking about in public education, because once they leave us in 12th grade, we send them to college, and some of them we're sending to college early. We're sending them to college in high school because we have our dual enrollment program. So really making this connection so that we're all aligned from K-16, right? Really thinking about all of us and how can we support our students through these shifts that we are potentially expecting with this new administration. So as I get ready to give each panelist a closing remark to kind of lead us out this evening, I just want to take this time again to thank the audience for being here this evening. Thank you for leaning into the conversation. Thank you for participating. Thank you for showing your enthusiasm about everything that we've said this evening. We've truly enjoyed being here with you. And as you can tell, each and every one of these ladies, they're so passionate about education because we can even get to all the questions. So it lets you know that the passion that they have for education and how we can support our communities is very important. So I'm going to let each one of them do a closing remark this evening on anything that they want to talk about as we come and bring this evening to an end, because remember, we were trusting the process, right? This was an intimate conversation about the state of education. So I'm going to start with Chantel, then to Miriam, and then Kiana can lead end us out. So go ahead.
Thank you. I'm just going to say I dropped 2 links in the chat. One is a Project 2025 tracker. I got to become intimately involved with that document, and this is a great way to track because information and knowledge is power. And as Black women, we often serve as the resource for our community. And so I like to share a couple of resources to help empower you, empower others. The Congressional Black Caucus Foundation has also done a executive order tracker, and it is tracking specifically how these executive orders impact Black Americans. I'll drop my email in the chat. So if I try to share a number of resources because I just believe in helping folks understand what's happening and being able to share those resources and information with our community. It's overwhelming, We can't all do it, but if we all just take a piece of it and add, we can, together we can form a whole pie. Because it is really a community responsibility. So we have to work together. So thank you for inviting me.
All righty, I'll jump in. I just want you to remain optimistic. And so we just will not be in a place of feeling defeated as if we don't have power. And so I am just asking that we lean in as a community, that we love on our children, that we work together to increase access and opportunities for all children, that we're in our schools and supporting our schools and, making sure that all the children in the village are doing well. And so that is a collective partnership. And the other thing, don't forget also, I know for the parents that are on the screen, grandparents, it's Teacher Appreciation Week, right? And so it is a good time to send an email, to thank a teacher, to drop a treat off, because our teachers work so hard to ensure that our kids have what they need. And sometimes, a lot of times, that's more than math, science, social studies, band, PE. A lot of our kids need to be seen, feel valued, and they also need a lot of other basic supports that teachers are on the front lines of supporting. So let's just stay encouraged and do the best we can to work together to ensure our kids are successful.
Okay, so I'll close us out. My mom, who was an educator for over 35 years, she always would say to me, good or bad, indifference, it's your little red wagon. You can push or pull it. So we can push it or pull it. Laws are going to change, policies are going to change. We can push the envelope. We can advocate for our babies. We can advocate for our community. We can stay informed, be engaged, but we also have the strength to pull it, right? So we can get together. We can serve as a village. We can go into these schools, whether we can give our time, again, no matter how big or small, you can give you $1. You can give kind words. Teachers have hard days, and sometimes they want to just hear a thank you. So whatever we can do together, we can pull together our strength, we can pull together our resources, and we can make things happen for our schools. And we also need to make sure that we just don't stop here, right? Because the change is new. We like shiny new things. So when things are new, we're all on it. Don't stop. Stay engaged, stay pushing, stay pulling.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again, ladies. And then I would be remiss if I did not take this opportunity to thank the May Week Committee that consists of Soror Daphne Ware, Chair, and Soror Charthea Nichols, Co-Chair of the Atlanta Suburban Alumni Chapter of Delta Sigma Theta, so Incorporated. So thank you so much, audience. We are so excited. We know we have some questions that we might need to answer offline, but we appreciate you for being here this evening. Thank you for Second Vice President Kiana Butler for welcoming us this evening. And I hope that this discussion that we had today has been enlightening to you. I saw a few people that said they wanted to come volunteer. I saw Miss Kiana had given them their email address, so they're going to be reaching out. So it's all about community. And if you need anything, you can look us up on our asacdsc.org website. And I hope you have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Bye-bye.